Can you believe a king fought big battles while also fighting a serious sickness? We're going to explore the amazing story of King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, who had to deal with leprosy but still managed to protect his kingdom from powerful enemies. We'll journey through his life, learn about his surprising rise to being king, and see how he never gave up. Find out why King Baldwin's inspiring story still matters to us today, showing how strong people can be, even when things get really tough. The Crusades were big wars that lasted from the 11th to the 15th century, changing how people in old-time Europe lived and thought. One important person from this time was King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, also known because he had a tough disease called leprosy. Even with this sickness, he worked really hard to protect a special place called the Holy Land. Baldwin IV was born in the year 1161 in Jerusalem, a city that many people find very holy. He wasn't the first son, his brother Baldwin III was, but he ended up being more famous. When he was just 9 years old, he started learning from a smart teacher named William of Tyre. This teacher saw that Baldwin didn't feel pain like other kids. Doctors found out he had leprosy, which meant he was going to have a hard life. Even though Baldwin was sick, he was super smart. His teacher William was amazed by how well Baldwin could remember things and how much he loved learning. These smart skills helped him become a great king later. When Baldwin was 13 years old, something sad happened. His father died. So, young Baldwin had to become king. At first, because he was so young, a guy named Raymond III of Tripoli helped him rule. But 2 years later, Baldwin showed everyone he could rule by himself, even though he was sick. As king, Baldwin made smart choices to keep his kingdom safe. He even helped his sister Sibylla get married to a man named Guy of Lusignan to make his army stronger. Baldwin was smart about fighting too. He attacked his enemy Saladin's places when Saladin was away. In November of the year 1177, something big happened. Saladin came to fight at a place called Ashkelon. Baldwin, though only 16 and with fewer soldiers, used a surprise plan to beat Saladin's bigger army. Saladin had to run away back to Egypt with very few of his soldiers left. But this big fight made Baldwin's sickness worse. He got sicker but stayed smart. He thought about stopping being king because he was so sick, but the other important people said no because he was a good leader. By the year 1183, Baldwin was very sick, and everyone thought he would die soon. He asked his sister's husband, Guy, to help lead because he was too sick to do it alone. Saladin came back to fight, and Guy had to lead the army. Baldwin, who didn't have children because of his sickness, said his nephew, Baldwin V, should be king after him. On March 16, 1185, when he was only 24 years old, Baldwin IV died because of his leprosy. People remember him for being strong even when things were hard. Now let's learn some more about the time and place when Baldwin IV was king. The Crusades were important because they changed how countries worked with each other. Soldiers from Europe went miles away to fight because they believed the Holy Land should belong to their religion. They were fighting against people who believed differently, like Saladin, who was a Muslim leader. During the Crusades, there were many different groups of people fighting for power. There were knights called Templars, who were like soldier monks. They lived in the Holy Land and protected it because they believed it was a special place for their religion, Christianity. They helped Baldwin IV when he fought against Saladin. The city where Baldwin was king, Jerusalem, is a very special city even today. It's important for 3 big religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. That's one reason why there were so many wars, called the Crusades, about who should rule it. Also, during the old times of the Crusades, people lived very differently. Most people couldn't read or write, and there weren't any computers or cars. People traveled on horses and sent messages with riders. They fought with swords and shields, not with guns like today. Kings and queens like Baldwin IV had a lot of power, but they also had to keep their people safe from diseases and wars. When we talk about Baldwin IV's disease, leprosy, we're talking about something that scared a lot of people back then. Today, doctors know how to treat leprosy, but back in the Crusades, they didn't. People who had leprosy were often left alone because others were afraid of catching it. But Baldwin IV showed that even with leprosy, he could be a strong, smart king. King Baldwin IV's story is really impressive. He was king for about 11 years, from 1174 to 1185. And during that time, he had to deal with a lot of tough stuff. Imagine being a king and having to make big decisions while also fighting a serious disease like leprosy. But Baldwin didn't let his sickness stop him. He was smart, brave, and never gave up, even when things got really hard. Baldwin IV was born in the year 1161 in Jerusalem. When he was just a kid, he started showing signs of leprosy, a disease that can cause pain and damage to the body. But no one knew exactly what it was until he became king after his dad, King Amalric, died. Being a young king wasn't easy. At first, a guy named Count Raymond III of Tripoli helped him make decisions until he turned 15 in 1176. That's when Baldwin started to show everyone how smart he was by planning to attack Egypt. But he didn't get enough support from his knights and had to call it off. Even though he was young and sick, Baldwin IV was really good in battles. In 1177, with the help of a nobleman named Reynold of Châtillon, he beat Saladin's much bigger army at a place called Montgisard. This win made people see how strong and smart he was as a leader. That same year, he also got the city of Ascalon back from Saladin. This was a big deal because it meant the Christians controlled southern Palestine again. Leprosy is a tough disease, and it got worse for Baldwin over time. It affected his body so much that he had trouble doing things, but he kept fighting in battles and even learned to ride a horse really well, despite not feeling his hands and feet. Leprosy is a disease caused by tiny germs that slowly spread in a person's body. At first, someone with leprosy might not feel pain as much as usual, especially in places like the fingers and toes. This happens because the germs harm the nerves, which are like tiny wires in our bodies that help us feel things. As the disease gets worse, it can make muscles weak, and it becomes hard to move parts of the body, like the hands and feet. People with leprosy also get sores on their skin. These sores can be flat or a little bumpy, and they might look red or pale. Over time, the sores can change the way a person's face, hands, and feet look, making them look swollen or misshapen. The sores might also feel numb, which means they don't hurt, but they can still cause problems because they can get infected easily. Because of his disease, Baldwin couldn't get married or have children, which made figuring out who'd be the next king really complicated. He wanted to step down as king because of his health, but there was a lot of arguing among the nobles, especially after his sister Sibylla married a guy named Guy of Lusignan, and not everyone liked him. So Baldwin had to keep being king. At first, Baldwin's leprosy didn't change how he looked too much, but over the years it caused sores on his skin, changed the shape of his face, hands, and feet, and made him lose his sight. Even with all the challenges from his sickness, Baldwin IV was a great king. He was strong, smart, and good at leading his army and making decisions for his kingdom. But it wasn't just about winning battles. His time as king was also tough because nobles were fighting each other, making the kingdom weak when they needed to be strong to face threats from Saladin. King Baldwin IV is remembered as a hero. He had to lead his kingdom, fight in battles, and deal with a terrible disease all at the same time. But through all that, he never stopped trying to do what was best for his kingdom. His story teaches us about courage, intelligence, and the strength to keep going, even when everything seems really hard. That's why he's such an important figure in history, especially for the city of Jerusalem. Isn't King Baldwin IV's story of bravery and strength incredible? If you're amazed by how he fought for his kingdom while battling leprosy, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales like this. What other stories of courage in history inspire you? Share in the comments and subscribe for more.